Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. This is a very special edition of the Transgender Show. As you can probably see from the camera, it's a bit different. This is our first in-person interview that I have done. I'm very excited that my first guest here in person is Audrey, a friend from a local LGBT organization who I ran into at Pride, and I was like, hey, I don't have a guest for the show. I want to do an in-person interview series, so let's throw you in and see how you do. Everybody, welcome to the show, Audrey.
I'm glad I can fill the spot. Last minute. Thank you, Emily. Thank you for having me, and Mimi, and everybody on the back end. Really appreciate running a show. I know it takes a lot, so thank you for dealing with all that tech issues and making us look great. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it does take a lot, and it takes a little bit more than you expect sometimes. It looks like we're still getting a little bit of lag from the two-shot camera. We'll try and use that as little as possible because that's a bummer. Anyways, let's go ahead.
Yeah, you could podcast it.
Yeah, the podcast version will be fine.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into your story. First off, how did you choose your name? My favorite question.
Ooh, okay. So I was a little chaotic when I chose my name. I ended up making like a list of all of like the actresses that I like loved growing up like as a kid, and it turned out to be a really long list. It just ended up being like a kind of like a thought of or a stream of consciousness of just all of the femme actresses, and then I was like, this is kind of a lot, and so I narrowed it down, and I was like, all right, well, let me kind of like, okay, let me just like ask like a real question, like, who do I want to be, or how do I want to be seen, and that kind of got me thinking about my family and like how my family named all of us. I have a twin sister, and so her name is Ashley, and the way that my parents named us because we were twins was she was the A child and I was the B child. I don't know why, but she came out first, so I'm like, maybe that's why.
Makes sense. Okay.
So they named her Ashley, and then they named me Brian, and that's all we knew growing up, is that we were just A and B, and it's kind of a boring story. So I was like, well, okay, if I actually was raised as a girl, like, what would my parents name me? And I thought, well, since we're twins and her name ends with like an EY, why not Audrey? And also Audrey Hepburn was like on that list. So I was like, and I just loved, I don't know, the EY, the feminine EY at the end just kind of made sense. I don't really it's not like it hasn't really stuck now that I've gotten to know myself more. I'm definitely wanting to change it like again. But it is what it is, and so now I have other, like Oxcord is another alias, or I'm all about having multiple names and having multiple people like know you by different names too. So it doesn't really stick, but it's something now that I like use, that you need to have a name. So if I'm going to be named, then at least it would be something that I chose. That's like kind of where it came from. So.
And you chose a very feminine name.
Yes.
And you identify as on the non-binary spectrum more, right? With the she, they pronouns?
That is true. Yeah. I have a hard time kind of separating my masculinity. And so when I first came out, I was like, I was like, oh, I'm gender queer, I'm gender neutral, like I've got short hair, but I wear makeup. And I've always been feminine, so and I grew up with my sister, so I like loved all of the feminine things. And what was the question? Sorry.
It wasn't framed as a question. Well, it was just basically you present predominantly female, at least what I've seen, and you went through and chose a female name to match with your sister. And where I was going to go with it is
That's right.
You know, next week we talk about kind of coming out and learning when you were transgender. And so what I'm trying to get at that is, how does the non-binary identity work into this with your presentation that's predominantly female?
Well, if we're gonna get real,
Please, yeah.
it has a lot to do with my body, and like the reality that, like, you know, we are male, and but not in all of the ways, just in some of them, and that's okay. Like, I don't, you know, everyone's like trans journey is their own, but it's just not accessible for me to get bottom surgery. Like, I know you know, we present very nice, but like I grew up in like a working class, like, you know, home where you don't just come up with like $50,000 on the spot. And so I knew it wasn't attainable to me. So I think I was trying to be real with myself. I was trying to like be honest with myself for a little bit, like to be like, wait, okay, you do have this part of you. What would it be like to honor that part too? And even though it's still just like, you know, it's just a body part, and we've definitely have done a lot of reframing around certain body parts. Yeah, I guess it's like it's not something I think too hard about now. I'll say that. Like, I felt really like, you know, like you feel empowered when you come out, and you feel empowered when you have an identity to, like, you know, to call yourself. And now I just kind of am like, I'm just, you know, I don't, just me. No, you know, not, I don't really fly the non-binary flag too hard, but I'm a huge advocate for like, for non-binary like representation though. Like, in this movement, in the women's movement, like including trans and non-binary people in the movement are super important. And I only care about that because I worked with non-binary and trans youth through Rainbow Umbrella, and getting to hear their, like, the teens' experience with gender also helped me kind of like understand my gender too. And I'm sure there's a part of that too that is why I probably identified as non-binary, because that's just who I was around at the time. And teenagers are naturally like non-binary anyway. They're trying on new things and, like, you know, calling in trying new things and trying on new things. So yeah.
Well, and the reason I ask that is, you know, I get a lot of trans women on the show, the kind of the same identity over and over again. And when people present as non-binary, it's something that I definitely want to call out and bring to the fore, because yeah, maybe there's some thought process behind your identity that is different than what a lot of trans women who have had on the show experience. And so your story will resonate more with other people that, you know, we haven't kind of reached yet. And so that's why it's really important to call attention to that and to dive into what your experience is in that. And like I said, it's interesting coming from the trans woman identity and understanding that very fully. And then, you know, like I said, seeing you choose a feminine name and a feminine presentation. And I just wanted to kind of dive into where the non-binary aspects fall into your identity. And it's really great what you said, because I feel that for myself, I struggle sometimes feeling like I'm not feminine enough. You know, masculine things. I'll say something, my voice will drop. I'll get upset in a very masculine way, and I'm really upset with myself because of that. And it's a really interesting framing to honor that, like you said, and make that part of your identity and accept that as part of your identity instead of, you know, just kind of throwing it away and saying, no, I'm supposed to be a girl, damn it, and I'm going to fight against myself and those tendencies that are masculine because I'm supposed to be this way now.
Right.
And it's important not to get into that when you're discovering your identity, the supposed tos, the shoulds, and explore and find what your identity actually is. So I appreciate that. That's great.
Thank you. And it's not everyone's experience. Like we're in Southern California, so I don't know if I should say that, but like so we've had a lot of freedom out here. But there's also been we live in a conservative state, or a conservative county. So for us, and for me growing up, I thought I had to separate the two for me. Like I had to be like, wait, I cannot be both. And so it really was kind of like coming to terms with like my past, and then kind of like keeping what doesn't fit or what doesn't work, because a lot of it didn't work. I mean, and that's okay. Like it doesn't have to work for everybody. And I think masculinity it's productive. I get the most done when I'm like accessing the like masculine parts of myself. Like the feminine side just want to like lay around and like just be pretty all day, but like the masculine side wants to get things done. We need to motivate and set our goals, and I think you can use both, regardless of however you identify. And I think also that's kind of part of the problem. Like, there's so many great things that makes us like similar, or like that makes it like that we can find common ground, too. And so I feel the safest around trans women, really. I mean, to be quite honest, or trans femmes, or just trans people in general. So regardless of how other trans people identify, it's like I can at least feel at home, even when our homes look different, like, or are dressed different or decorated differently.
So I'm curious then, the understanding that you were trans. When did you identify as trans, and how did that process go for you? Sort of, the typical thing. What cracked your egg, and when did you realize, like, yeah, this is something I've really got to move on and start changing my presentation?
That's so I came out in 2015, which was like the year that there was like a lot of things that were kind of happening, and where are we going with this? All right, so I knew the minute I could like form like ideas. There was just something about the way that I was different, and that I wasn't like everybody else, that just made it like very obvious that like, oh, like she's different. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that me and my twin sister how we were raised in a like poor working class like family, where you were the boy and you were the girl, and you get pink and you get blue, and everything about us were separated. And so even though I knew at 4 that I was different, I loved femininity. I was like, I loved even just like being naked and like playing with that, like moving. Like I have this image, like this memory of me being on the beach and like just at like 4 years old, and like having it was just a towel behind me, but the way that I was moving in the wind, and I was like living my whole life in that moment. And every time that I like want to go back, every time that I always want to go back to that moment, because it's like that was the freest that I remember ever being. And then so the struggle was like learning that like, oh, I can only be that free in certain times and in certain places. Mm-hmm. So every place that I was in, I tested the boundaries, and I was like, because I knew that I was different. I didn't know why, and I didn't understand all the rules at first, and I was mad at the rules. Like I was mad at patriarchy in general, like the fact that like I can't be who I am. And so I lashed out in a lot of different ways, but it wasn't until like I think when I hit maybe 8 years old that it really hit. That was like, oh shit, this isn't something that, even though again we're in Southern California and it's, you know, people have all ideas about what it's like here in California. We're still in a conservative county, and there's certain things there's things that you can do and can't do. And so, Lennon, I know, wants to be the star.
The dog's making an appearance. How dare you bark at my guest? How dare you?
I know.
Go away.
Only because we're not talking about him.
All the interruptions.
There were moments where I like tried to come out when I was in high school, and I also grew up in the church. So, and my father's from Texas, my mom's from Wisconsin, so it's like they were super religious, and so I was like, I knew I couldn't get out or come out at then, but I knew there was a part of me that knew that I guess one day. So like I was trying to hold off. I told my therapist, I was like, it feels like you're like growing up in a home where you're like, these are your parents and you have a home to live in, but like they feel like you're a foster parent or you're a foster kid or you're like adopted, because like they don't check in on you, they don't ask you how you're doing, they don't and all the other reasons why like working class parents, you know, can't do that. But also I think a lot of the energy went to my sister and to raise up her, because of the ways in which femmes or like girls and cis women are supported. And I was just kind of left in the room to like be on my computer and play video games and watch porn and do, you know, all of the soothing like mechanisms to like keep me from a world that was really scary for a queer trans kid. And so, yeah, I kind of just like, all right, we're going to wait on that and just see where life goes. And I'm glad it ended up where it did, but it got pretty dark along the way, but I'm glad that we found, you know, some light at the end of the tunnel, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
So you spent your whole life knowing and then just waiting for when this moment is that I'm going to be able to come out and truly be myself.
Yeah, and it now, like, hearing you back like that, it's like, you know, you don't make that active choice, but there's a part of you, and that this is why I get cis women sometimes, where it's like I understand where you know, you'll be nurturing to maybe like the queer, like your queer child, but like when dad comes home, like there's no support, or like the you know, I get that, you know, you're upholding, at the end of the day we all have to survive, and at the end of the day I was trying to survive what I thought I was doing. But like, yeah, I guess you know, it didn't hit me that I was like, oh yeah, that I was holding out until recently, because that wasn't really like present. I was just trying to do what everyone told you were supposed to do, right? Like, and so I got married, and I like did that for a year and a half and did not work out. But and I got married to a cis girl who was, you know, who did not like the idea that I was like telling her that I was bisexual, because I was trying to come out to her and be like, hey, this is who I am, but she was not. Yeah. She was like, no. She came from a Navy, like her dad was a Navy Navy dad. My dad was a Navy dad, super strict. So I was just like, well, these are the roles we're given, so this is what we're gonna play until we get handed something better. And then 2017 happened. Well, even though I came out of 2015, 2017 was a huge shift in a lot of trans awareness. Like, so much that that's when I was like, okay, this is possible. This is something I've wanted my entire life.
Okay.
How do I get on hormones? Like, that was my first, like, which looking back now, I'm like, girl, you probably should have figured out some of the social stuff first. But I also get why, like, sometimes you got to see the outside before you believe what's beautiful on the inside. And testosterone fucking sucked though. It was like, I don't know, that the minute I knew that there was a choice that I could have something different, that's kind of what like opened up my mind to what was possible. And so I straightened up, and I was like posting on Instagram motivational like breakfast, and like I'm going on a run, and I'm doing all these things, and I'm like, why I never did this? Why am I doing this now? What is self-love? Not like that's only what self-love is, but it was like the first time I was actually trying to like make something out of my life, because before I was just like, it was like watching a movie, or like, you're watching your own movie play, and it's bad, and you don't know, you can't do anything about it.
Can't control it, can't stop it.
Throw popcorn at the screen. I don't know.
So that watching the movie, well, actually, the self-motivational stuff and the breakfast and all of that, was that after you started HRT, or that was okay?
That was like, okay, I know I need, if I really want this, I know I need, and it was like more of like a health like thing, like, because I was also super overweight, did not care about what I was putting my body doing with my body. And so then I finally started caring about that. Because I knew if I'm going to start HRT, I need to take care of my body, because there are some health risks. I mean, there's health risks with anyone and all hormones. I mean, everybody, you walking out the door is a risk. So I thought, why not take it and see what happens? It took a long time though to see what happened.
That's one of the things we definitely talk about a lot on this show, that one of the keys to transition is patience. It takes a long time for your body to get up to speed. It takes there's so many things, it takes a while for your family, your friends to get up to speed. So and it's very interesting that you put out there that it kind of took you a while to get up to speed there too, to start the social transitioning stuff until you started to see some of the hormone changes. And I think that's pretty common, especially like from the era that we come from, where there was always negative examples of what it was to be trans, and we didn't see anything positive. I think what happened in 2015, 2017, was that about when Caitlyn came out, or was that after?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Caitlyn came out, and Laverne Cox was extremely popular with Orange is the New Black. So there was, media started noticing trans women. Janet Mock also came out with her book Surpassing Realness around that time. All of these like trans femmes and women who are creating like better worlds, like, and not just like for themselves, but like Janet Mock being a writer, and they're just seeing like a new world, new possibility. Around that time.
Well, and that's, I think, what makes the time that we're in right now kind of difficult. There are so many conservatives that are saying that the trans and LGBT community are grooming folks, to be transgender. I won't say that there's truth in that. What I'm trying to get at is that visibility and being out and showing other people that this is possible is what makes it possible for them. So in a way, us being visible does sort of trigger other people to come out, but only in the way of like, oh, this is actually something that I can do. I've always wanted to do it, but now I finally see a positive example of it.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest, it's the most cyberpunk thing to come out of like the real world, and like, this is a novel, right? Like, us choosing our own, and that's another thing, right? Is it a choice? And I think it's a choice to live authentically. And so if you think that determining with hormones your life trajectory, and if that's a choice you can make, that's pretty cyberpunk. That's like that is the future. And I but at the same time, I do think people need to like understand what they're getting into, because you're not wrong. There are some groups here who are like, that's the first step is, oh, we need to get you on hormones, we need to get you, this and this, which is great. And my dad even had that like concern when I first told him that I wanted to do this. And so, but at the same time, if this is what's going to save someone's life, or like if this is going to be, a moment for them to actually do something with their life instead of the opposite, right? Like what I was doing, literally just in purgatory, waiting to see what was going to happen. And actually like, if that's what it's going to take in order for you to do other things, and I say, why not? But why are you doing it? Are you doing it because other people are doing it? Or are you doing it because you want to do something with your life? And transitioning, unfortunately, medically is also the only way that some of us are taken seriously.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I think of when I think of this conversation, it reminds me of this, how do you say? It's a legend, so we don't, this isn't based in history, but there's this legend that an African trans woman was able to adjust her hormone levels just by like praying to like the goddess, or
self-actualization.
Yeah, literally. But like, and so I think we can get to those like places without hormones, but I think for some of us, hormones are safeties. Hormones are getting a job. Because and that was kind of my strategy, as I knew from my upbringing in a conservative like world where gender and gender roles are predestined and predetermined, just to make things easier, right? We gotta burden the load, or how was that phrase, where we have to give
bear the burden
somehow, or we gotta, and so that's another thing coming out of it is like, well, we can like we can do other things without like hormones. Like we don't need, we can, so it's like it's helpful, but also and sometimes you can't, like I've had issues where like my insurance has changed and I'm like, I might have to stop hormones. So like that's also a problem too, where it's like if you don't have a job where you can keep up like insurance, or if you're not on Medi-Cal or like on a state program where you can like get support, or if you pay out of pocket, like there was a whole year I had to pay out of pocket for my hormones just because it was cheaper than getting a healthcare plan, which is like insane. Yes. Right? Like I would choose that over it, just in case like something happens. But that's what some of us we have to make that choice. It's all a choice, not to quote the Matrix or make this about, the Matrix. But
well, and yeah, it's such an interesting it's so interesting how your story was, where you came out, you started putting it together, and you thought hormones right away. You started on hormones. For me, the permanent changes were the things that I was most afraid of. And I fought being trans for a very long time, but I couldn't fight the need to express femininity. Right. So I came out as a cross-dresser, and actually even came out socially full-time as a cross-dresser. Looking back, it was just a strange choice, especially because it would be, I think, 3 full years before I would start HRT. Again, because I was afraid of the permanent changes, and had gnawing in the back of my head of like, well, what if I'm not really trans, and this is just all that stupid conservative rhetoric going through my head. It's just a phase, or if I get to a certain point and I realize that I've made the wrong choice, then I'm screwed. And I love that you were able to start there with the HRT and just go into it and see what happened, and then that helped you get the confidence to do the other things.
I mean, I definitely cross-dressed in my ex-wife's clothes and my sister's clothes.
Mhm.
So, like it was definitely there, for sure.
Mhm.
And I mean, fabric feels good, and
Mhm.
and it's nice to, I don't know, try on new looks.
Yeah.
So I don't see why. I mean, it's like an art form. It's like
Yeah.
literal performance art. Like, so I don't blame you for identify. And I feel like cross-dressers or people who identify as cross-dressers get a bad rap because it's like, oh, it's just sexual, or it's just like that's the thing that they want. It's like, hold up, but I am putting on an entire show for you. Like, can we acknowledge that? Like, first, like, I don't know. That's just I didn't come out for a long time because of this stigma about cross-dressers and about trans people in general. So it's cool to hear someone actually like say that you identified as one.
Well, and it's kind of funny, and I mentioned this on the show a lot. And you're gonna hit your bingo cards pretty hard here, but the fact that so many trans communities shun cross-dressers because of various reasons, and it's like, no, it's really important to have them, to accept them as part of the transverse because of that. There are so many uncracked eggs out there that identify as cross-dressers and just need that help and that understanding and the assurance that they can come out and live their true identity as a trans person. So I'm kind of curious how your story in coming out might vary, again, from our typical trans female perspective. Was it different? Did you come out as trans femme first and then decide on the non-binary identity?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I went full femme.
Okay.
And it wasn't realistic. It was giving a bad performance. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, which wasn't bad. I think I mean, you're gonna fall and be wobbly and weird when you first take your first steps for the first time. So, I went from putting on makeup for hours on end in the bathroom and trying on like my sister's clothes and my ex-wife's clothes when they were at home in the middle of the night to literally like walking outside. It's a whole nother different world. It's like, it's one is like playing dress up and the other is I don't know, like more, I don't know.
It's just taking a step into a new world, and it's really interesting how different it feels. How just it is a completely different world. And I remember, again, that was another huge fear for me, was making that leap of going out in public. I had finally gotten to the point of being comfortable going out and shopping in the women's section for things to a certain degree. But then when it was time to actually wear women's clothes out and go shopping, then it was just like the fear went back up to 1,000. And, getting to the point where I was actually doing that and feeling sort of comfortable with it was just world changing. Everything shifted. And then I kind of remember, again, another slight shift a little bit later when walking through a women's section and shopping, I finally felt like it was my section. Like it wasn't somebody else's section and I was invading it when I finally started to feel like, no, this is the place where I'm supposed to be. And that was another big shift and really kind of helped. It just helps everything. And it's not an identity. It wasn't an identity for me until I was out in public. And that was one of the big key things that helped me realize that I was trans and not a cross-dresser, was that need to be in public and to be seen in a feminine way. not just need to dress up and feel the clothes, because it's like, yeah, you could dress up at home or you go on a trip or whatever, but when you need to do it every day and have people see you out in public, it's like, okay, yeah, there's something else going on here that I need to identify and to deal with.
Yeah.
So what was your coming out like? Who did you start with, and who was the most difficult for you?
That's a great question. I started with the easy ones first, just to make it easier. I started with my mom. I started with my sister, and they were very easy because they saw all of the signs. My dad was the hardest, and he didn't take it too well. I ended up writing. I hear a lot of trans people talking about this, but I wrote a letter, and I let them, my whole immediate family, know this is my name, my new pronouns, and these are how you can contact me. And I had distant cousins reach out, and a distant aunt reach out, too, actually, and my dad didn't reach out, and my grandparents on my dad's side didn't reach out. I didn't send it to my grandparents on my mom's side because they're back in. I'm not really close with them. But my grandma, and my grandpa on my dad's side basically raised me. So to hear nothing from them was kind of it ended up being the last nail in the coffin, only because they didn't reach out at all after that. Until well, we don't have to get into that story. Let's just say there was drama, and we don't need to go into that.
Okay.
But yeah, but that's on them. I don't need them to accept me, and and I don't need I don't need my parents' approval. But at the same time, it does kind of make me feel like we're doing life raw when you don't really have so we looked to mentors and other people, and other adults have definitely filled in that role, because there's only so much you can get from your parents.
Yeah, well, that's a key point too. Yeah. In that absence of parental help and support, where did you look to find that in the community?
I looked to actually looked to the local nonprofit here. I looked to my brother. My brother identifies as gay or queer, I guess. Probably both. I'm not sure actually. And so he has been my biggest mentor throughout all of this. He's 2-3 years older than me.
Okay.
And has just so much love and support unconditionally that that definitely filled that void. That's for sure. And then I reached out to our local nonprofit to volunteer. I really wanted to give back. And so and going back to I think what you had mentioned about wanting to be seen, kind of out in public, there was definitely that need. After I came out, there was definitely that need of I need to do something, but I also want to be where I want to be used I want to give service, now that we know a little bit more about who we are. And so volunteering was super, super helpful.
And how much did that help you discover more about yourself and accept yourself? It sounds like you were helping others and volunteering at an early stage in your transition.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Yeah, it was literally the same year it came out. It was the same year I volunteered. I probably because I grew up in the church, and my mom is a pastor's daughter, so I'm sure there's that is instilled to me too, of just I'm sure there was you won't be seen as the bad trans person if you volunteer. I'm sure there was that negative feedback loop. But when I did, I was oh, this is actually helping me. It's the whole thing of when you're a teacher, it's I thought I was teaching them, but they were teaching me the whole time. It was very much this scenario. I'm these teens have such an insight on themselves and the world, and are so willing to voice it, and are so funny and creative and sensitive. It reminded me of like who I once was as a kid, and so that kind of opened up more things, and then more after meeting more queer and trans people too, and through that work, just seeing other trans and queer people like do things just makes me like, gives me permission to like do things too, like this. And and more, I'm sure, soon. Or this isn't it, I hope.
Yeah, I'm sure your work isn't done in the community, and I've got some designs on that, definitely.
You're gonna give me a lot more here, I'm sure.
So, you know, going back to coming out, because I did want to circle back to one of my favorite questions to ask there. Did you have anybody that supported you that you weren't expecting, or supported you in a way that was bigger than you expected?
I will say, I guess my mom. My mom definitely supported me in a very unconditional way, and that was nice to at least have one person in the beginning, because it was a lot at first to kind of like be like, dang, I really have like only like 2-3 people, but that's been how do you say, like it's been a learning process. Me and my mom, we've got a lot of work to do. So she is supportive, but I don't think she just doesn't know what to do next, other than just to like send me Bible verses and that, like, I love you so much, and I'm like, that's great. So, and that's another thing I just have to like accept, is that that's all that she can do right now, and that's, you know, okay. And even though I don't want to hear the Bible verses, it makes her feel better to send them. So, and
that's another point of that patience I was talking about, and understanding the people around you, their needs, and honoring those, so that they can come along with you on the journey, instead of being like, no, you have to accept me this way, in this way, and do these things. I think it's important to cut her that slack.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get there, and I think a lot of I hear a lot of angst from our teens too. And I remember being an angsty teen, and I did not like my parents at all when I was a teenager. And we're not supposed to, and maybe that's part of the reason, right? Is that, like, you know, we get a lot of parents who reach out and they have all these questions, and what do we do? And it's like, well, that's kind of part of the problem, is you don't know what to do, because you're dealing with a literal outlier. You're literally, this is someone who's not from your blueprint. You don't have the rule book. So of course you're going to mess it up. But and also, this teenager is one of the most angstiest teenagers that you probably could get. And so of course there's going to be like turmoil. And I think parents also forget that. And I think teenagers, like you said, also forget that, to be patient, that, like, you know,
teenagers have no patience.
Yeah, no. I mean,
remember those days.
Well, and I get it. You know, you see all of this awareness on the internet, and you see all of your friends also on the internet, and then I remember being a teenager, getting back into the real world of like, wait, no, we've got the very masculine energy of like, no, we've got work to do, and you in all this gender mess is not. It's a waste of my time, right? Or it doesn't serve the greater good, but it does. But they don't see the goodness. They don't see the greater good in us.
So, in your volunteering experience, what are some of the things that you feel most proud that you've been able to accomplish, or some of the biggest things that you feel you've been able to do in volunteering in these places and being present for some of these teens and families?
That is a big question. I just think having someone to like literally pick up the phone or email, or just to like talked to has been the biggest help. And I think, yeah, just having, having a person, and there are so many people like in our community that are doing great things too. And so it was also connecting with like other like cool ass trans people and queer people who are artists and like poets. It was giving Renaissance. It was giving like the new age art, you know, Renaissance realness. I think just having a place to go and something to do, even if it was just like literally coloring in like pages of, cut like a coloring book and talking about, gender or sexuality, just literally having someone to talk to, I think was the biggest, and
the biggest service you were able to offer some of these kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we did other great things, like we did like events, and we went out to like Malls of Pride in LA, and so like just having someone to drive y'all to somewhere, or like have that was really cool to kind of be the person that was like, oh yeah, I'm like, when I was looking for a mentor, but then I ended up being like a mentor for some of these teens, which was, I didn't plan on it, but because the job was kind of just handed to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was volunteering, and then they were like, all right, here's this job. And then I was like, all right, I need a job. So, which is how a lot of trans people get into a lot of nonprofits. So,
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, it's not easy. Definitely have had the most challenging days this year in the work.
Is that because of what you've seen that the teens that you're working with experience, or is it more like sort of workload based?
I think probably a little bit of both.
Okay.
I love how I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but we're talking about it.
Oh yeah, but just keep it vague.
No, that is true. I'm saying that to myself because it's like, because I obviously want to talk about it, but I also like to be stubborn too. Okay, so so get real for a second. There have been a lot of suicides in the state of California alone, but so just hearing those numbers increase, I think really put the pandemic into perspective, that like isolation can really be like the last nail in the coffin for some of us. And so I think we definitely need a trigger warning for this episode, but also I want to be real and say that, like, even there's even people in our own backyard or in our own county that, even though we have programs, that still don't feel like they have a place.
Yeah.
And so they're not, we're not talking, a lot of people aren't talking about it, but the county, we'll just say that the people who are in the decision and who are making decisions are ramping up their programs because of those increased numbers. And we've known those numbers have been there, but that's just kind of always been a driving like force for just reminding me why the work is important. Because I was also there too. Like, I remember there's so many times where I was like, I don't want to be here. This is not it. I'm about to literally peace out because I don't have anything else that's better. So, so I would hope that's, that more programs here have definitely like come out that have been like LGBTQ specific programs. There's a huge community here that is like when we visit high schools, like the numbers of trans and queer people on campus is just like almost overwhelming. Like when we do tabling events, we get rushed with like hundreds of teens, and it's like you can see they're just like literally longing for something, like a connection or light at that end of the tunnel. So I would hope more more people can kind of take that torch. And it's a good way to get out of your head and to get out of the house is to give back.
So Audrey, we talked a lot about the things that have gone on in the local nonprofits that you work for and in the local community. What do you feel are some of the do you feel like they're I'm just gonna take that all over. This show is just very, very loose. It's gonna be a lot of editing, so this is more work for me, but I'm sorry. Is there anything that you feel that you've been able to accomplish because of your transition?
Ooh, that I don't think anyone has ever asked me that question. Um, I I feel like okay, all right. Let's be real. I feel like I've been able to accomplish a lot of things, and as I'm like trying to figure out that list of things. What have I accomplished? No, I'm just kidding. I transitioning has pushed me in ways that I probably still don't even know. Um, I don't I don't think I would have the job that I have now if I didn't transition. I don't think I would have the amazing partner that I have now if I didn't transition. Um, I don't think I would be this sane or like here if I didn't. It's like it's and maybe it's a catch-22, or like maybe it's like, like because I transitioned, of course, like, but like I couldn't see it going any other way. I think I'm a better overall person because of it. I would hope so. Like, and yeah, and I know it's like, some people do transition and they're like, you know what, that's not for me, and that's okay too. Or some people transition and they can't get healthcare, and so they don't medically transition. That's okay too. I'm sure there'll be a point in my life where I'll definitely have to transition again and again and again. Not into new identities, but just into new like places. Like, so I feel like I can do life better because I've overcome one of the most challenging interpersonal battles I probably have ever had. So it makes the outer battles easier to.
You do get a feeling of a sort of invincibility, don't you? Almost of like yeah, okay, yeah. If that didn't sink me, nothing can.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it.
I mean, I hope it's not inflating my ego, but it definitely, it. I think that's good though. We need an ego to do things. If we didn't have one, then we wouldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, an ego and testosterone, right, to accomplish things.
That's true. I thought I transitioned to get away from those things, but I realize I need those things. But yeah, I guess that's where I'm at now.
And as we wrap up, what are some of the key pieces of advice that you have to pass on to young or closeted trans folks out there?
Do it, or do whatever makes that makes you shine, and that could be cross-dressing, that could be playing music, that could be painting, that could be whatever like gets you connected to your body, and or that could be, I don't know, dancing naked with your beach towel. I don't know, whatever, literally whatever floats your boat. And I know that sounds maybe too blanket statement-y, but I think we do more work to make things a lot harder for ourselves. And so sometimes things are just as simple as literally, even though it doesn't seem as simple as transitioning. I like to think that like I'm not like, we're not putting on the face, or we're not putting on like clothes. We're like, we're revealing ourselves. It's almost like we're taking things off, like, right? So don't feel like you have to like, I don't know, like I heard one trans woman say that like, don't make the makeup or your clothes, or like don't make the material things like your femininity. Like ask yourself like what you like, and literally that, I don't know, use that as your roadmap and go from there. Because we're all gonna like different things and we're all gonna do it differently. right? Like, I'm different. She's different. We're all different. So your roadmap is the only different, and that's okay, right? Like mine
Yeah.
is, and so be very cautious about who you follow too, like who you make a mentor, who you make like your idol or your leader, because that's also gonna like, um, you know, affect who you turn out to be, or and so. I like to remind myself of like the trans women and trans leaders who've come before me. That's been super helpful to kind of seeing what's been done before, through like, I guess, activism or other art forms. So if you're like, I don't know where to start, starting looking at to the ones that came before us might be super helpful. Or reading about trans people's lives or how they've come out might be helpful. Yeah.
Well, Audrey, thank you so much for coming on the Transgender Show and sharing your story and being willing to be our guinea pig for the first live in-person version of the show.
Thanks, Emily, and the rest of the Transverse team as well for having us and me. And yeah, looking forward to more in-person interviews.
Yes.